Hello, Tulsa. It is such an honor to be here with all of you. I have some roots here in Oklahoma that you'll hear about in a moment, but it's just such an incredible honor to be here with you as we stand for life, as we stand for women, because we know that life is what empowers women. So thank you for being here. 10 years ago, I met my birth mother. And growing up, my sister and I were both adopted. In fact, adoption was our normal, we like to say. People would, in school, we remember, my sister Rachel and I, we remember people coming up to us in school and saying, gosh, we're so sorry that you're adopted. You know, they had seen the movie Annie. And we were like, why are you sorry? This is such an incredible thing, and it's because our parents had told us all our life that we were wanted, chosen, loved. And so when my sister and I both thought about meeting our birth mothers, there was really nothing to be afraid of because we knew who we were. We knew that we were wanted. We knew that we were loved. We knew that we were chosen. And so what we would find out when we met our birth mothers, those were circumstances that affected us, but they didn't define us. So my sister met her birth mother first, a little over 10 years ago. And I had the privilege of meeting my sister's birth mother and sitting across from her at this table and watching them. And I remember how they looked alike and how they acted alike. And their feet were the same size. It was incredible to watch them interact with each other. And I remember thinking, you need to thank her, Claire, because you wouldn't have your sister if it wasn't for this woman who gave her her life, who gave her into our family, placed her into our family. And so I did. I thanked my sister's birth mother that day. And in that moment, I thought, okay, I've just thanked my sister's birth mother, but I have a birth mother too. And she did the same incredible and selfless thing for me that my sister's birth mother did. And I need to thank her. And so I was 20 at this point, and I called my adoption agency on the phone after I talked with my family at home, and we were excited. We were excited about the possibility of meeting this woman who had done this incredible thing for me. And so we called the adoption agency pretty quickly. And a woman named Debbie answered the phone that day. And I told her who I was, and she said, actually, I know who you are, Claire. I have your picture on my desk, and it's been sitting here for the past 21 years. You're wearing your little cast, and you have a harness on and casts on your feet. And I didn't understand why she would have that picture on her desk for 21 years later. But that was my first glimpse of what was about to change in my life, what I was about to find out, and the beauty that God was about to reveal to me through my life, through my birth mother's life, through my adoption story. My birth mother agreed instantly when she reached out to her to meet me. She had been waiting for that call for 21 years. And we met in Dallas, Texas, in an in-between spot for us. And I brought my family, she brought her family. It was incredible. I was able to see, just like my sister did, who I looked like, who I acted like, why I'm 5 foot nothing. And in fact, my sister's first comment was, now we know why you walk and talk so slow. But it was incredible to just be able to see myself in this woman that gave me my life and to be able to thank her for that incredible gift. And so we set a second meeting up, and I flew to where she lived, and we had this incredible second reunion. And that night, I gave her a gift and a card. And on that card, I had written, "Thank you for choosing life for me." And my birth mother, she opened the gift, and she cried really happy tears as she opened that gift. And then she read the words on those cards, and instantly something changed. She said, "Claire, there's something I need to tell you." And we walked into a room in her home, and we sat down on this bed, and she turned and looked at me. And the pain in her eyes was something that I had never seen before in anyone's eyes. She said, "Claire, I was 13 when I was pregnant with you. I didn't know I had a choice. In fact, my mother told me that my only choice was to have an abortion. And so my birth mother had a D&E dismemberment abortion at 20 weeks. They told her that day that her life would go back to normal, that they had solved her problem, but it didn't. She went back to the doctor a few weeks later, and they told her that her abortion had been successful, but that she had been pregnant with twins, and that I had survived her abortion. They asked her what she wanted to do that day, and her mother quickly spoke up and said, "We need a second abortion. You didn't solve the problem. You didn't do your job." And so they sent her to Kansas. And so my birth mother was driven to Kansas and was ready to have that second abortion that her mother requested. And the doctor, after examining her, he told her that he couldn't do it because they had ripped that amniotic sac that I was in that day. And she was so close to delivery, and it was too risky for infection. So my birth mother was driven back to where she lived, dropped off at an adoption agency where Debbie was, that answered my call that day. She was her caseworker 21 years before. My birth mother delivered me at 30 weeks. I weighed 3 pounds, 2 ounces. I had a dislocated hip and club feet. I like to say that those are my daily reminders that I am a twinless twin and that I am an abortion survivor. As you can imagine, this was not something I expected to find out. I thought the worst thing that will happen will be she won't want to meet me. I never imagined that I would find out that I survived something that was literally meant to take my life. But I am so grateful for my birth mother's courage as she allowed me to share this story with you and with people all across the country, because for the first time for me, and maybe for many of you, I was able to put a face and a name and a story with that unborn child. And I was able to empathize and love and forgive my birth mother and that woman who is desperately looking for someone to stand up for her in her moment of desperation as she's walking into an abortion clinic. And so this story, it is real. It is heartbreaking. It is challenging for so many of us to hear and to acknowledge. But for me, it gives me hope, because I hope that it motivates you to go home and to do something about this. When I used to think about the person that had been affected by abortion, I thought, that will never be me. That's someone that doesn't go to my church, that doesn't go to my school, that is certainly not in my family. Certainly not in my community, in my neighborhood, and I was absolutely wrong. The person that has been affected by abortion is in my family. They do sit in the pews of my church. They do live in my neighborhood. They are in my community. They do go to my kids' school. And we as a community, we have the privilege, the honor, the duty to stand up for her. And so I am so encouraged as I look out and see all of your faces. Because you're not just here to march for anyone today. You came here and you literally marched for me. So thank you for being here today. It is going to take every single one of us to create a culture of life to empower women through real options, through resources, through support, something that my birth mother didn't have, but desperately wanted. It's gonna take every single one of us can do something. We have got to go home and take what we have learned today, take how we have been empowered and encouraged, and go home and start the conversation in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, with our pastors, with our children. Because if we don't, somebody else will. And we have got to continue the fight in our communities as we go home. Do not leave it here. If you're here today and you have had an abortion, I hope that the loudest message you hear from me today is that I have forgiven my birth mother. Because I looked into her eyes that day and I saw that pain and I knew that it wasn't her choice, but even if it had been, I still chose to forgive her. And I still, every single day, choose to forgive her because Christ forgave me first. And he forgave her too. And so the right response was to forgive my birth mother too. And so if you have experienced an abortion, please come talk to one of us. There's an incredible ministry, Rachel's Vineyard here, because there is hope and there's healing after an abortion. And we would love to help you start that process. And men, you are often left out of this conversation, but I want to apologize to you on behalf of every single woman that for the lie that we have told you that it is my body and it is my choice and that you have no say, because that is a lie. You have a voice. Did you know that I talk to women all over the country and it's always the same thing? If I were scared and I were pregnant and I didn't know what I was going to do and I were to walk towards the doors of an abortion clinic, do you know what would make me stop and think? Do you know who would make me stop and think? It would be you. It would be that man out there that looks like my daddy, that looks like my brother, that looks like my husband, that looks like my friend, fighting for me, telling me that I'm worth it, that I can do it, that there's something better for me than what's behind the doors of that abortion clinic. That is what would make me stop and think. And that is because God has created you men to be leaders and to be protectors and guiders of women and children. And so I would encourage you to be bold and to speak truth in love and to stand in the gap for women, because you have the most powerful God-given voice here today. There was no accident in my story. There was no mistake. My story was written exactly how it was supposed to be, because to look at the abortion survivor, you look at the humanity of the unborn baby. In fact, someone came up to me a few weeks ago and he said, "Claire, your story is so impactful, and here's why. Because you were a twin, when I look at you, I am literally looking at your twin. I am literally looking at the face of that unborn baby." And he said that gives me a hope and a drive to fight, because there is a face and a name and a story, and this does matter because it affects people just like me and you. And I thought, wow. What if we let that move us enough? What if we let that upset us enough? The reality of what abortion is, what abortion does, the very procedure that tore my twin's body apart limb by limb. What if we let that sink in? What if we let that move our hearts to action? What would that look like for each of us? I don't know what it looks like for each of you, but I know that it is possible for each of you because God is going to use every single one of us. We just have to be willing. And so I would encourage you to go home and to pray, to get involved in local pro-life organizations in your community, to go out and vote for pro-life legislators, Amen. To do your part, because we don't live in a time where we can come to one event a year and go home and pretend like this isn't happening to people just like me and to people just like you. Abortion has hurt too many people, and I don't know about you, but I've absolutely had enough. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak in Dallas, and that is the place where the legalization of abortion began. I spoke on the steps of the courthouse where Roe won the case that went to the Supreme Court and then ultimately legalized abortion. And that was an incredible moment for me. Not just because of that, but because of what Dallas, Texas meant for me. That is the place where I was brought home from the hospital after I survived my birth mother's abortion. I was given a name. My adoption was legalized in a courthouse down the street from there. I reunited with my birth mother 10 years ago there in Dallas, Texas. That moment was incredible for me. But this moment is gonna be better. So, you might want to get out your phones for this. I told you about my birth mother's abortion, and I want you to know that I survived my birth mother's abortion in Oklahoma, just a couple hours down the road. And I was adopted from Oklahoma to Texas by an incredible mom who loved me and wanted me, and I reunited and I was able to visit my birth mother 10 years ago, where she told me, "No, Claire, I did want you, and abortion did wrong me. In fact, the abortion doctor never even spoke to me." And I think about the magnitude of what happened in Oklahoma on my life, on so many other people's lives. And I thought, I want to give you a picture of what that looks like. I want you to be the first people to see that big picture in my life. And so today I want to bring up my mom, Barbara, who adopted me onto me. And I also want to bring up my birth mother, Tanya. This is why you march. This is why you fight, because abortion has wronged us, but life and forgiveness and love and redemption, that is what has empowered the three of us as women standing here today. And so I would encourage you to go home into your communities and to do something to fight for people like me, to fight for women like my birth mother who desperately wanted something more and deserved it. So thank you, and God bless you all.